Hey, Mike.
Hey, what?
What would you give me to jump in that pool behind us? Would you give me
I would
Friday
give
off?
you. I would give
me
you
Friday off.
I'll give you
Friday off,
and I'll give you $5 on top of it.
$5 and Friday off. I jump in the pool.
You got to strip down to your skivvies. Jump in the pool.
I'm not gonna strip down to my skivvies, but I will jump in the pool.
All right, let's see. Let's see if he's got the guts to do this. Let's see. You know, he doesn't know this, but he's really an idiot.
Oh!
he really is.
Time to the
Look at, and then the hairpiece floated to the top.
It's a holiday in there. That's better than
He
ever.
swims like my dad.
Wow, I can't believe that was 30 years ago for NECN. That's right, New England Cable News. Mike Adams and I were the original sports guys there, and we're getting back together again on Wednesday night, April 12th at the Summit Lounge in Worcester, Massachusetts for a live In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and Mike Adams, the legendary Planet Mikey. You got to come down to the Summit Lounge and join us 7 p.m. live to 9 p.m. will be the live show. We'll have contests and prizes and some giveaways. What does this have to do with cannabis, you ask? You'll have to come down to the Summit Lounge to check it out or tune in on the Pro Cannabis Media social media network Wednesday night, April 12th, 7 to 9 p.m. Join us, won't you? All right, we're here. It's Friday. In fact, it's not just any Friday, right, folks? It's Good Friday. A happy Easter weekend to everybody, a happy Passover to my fellow Jewish friends, and welcome to Green Rush Live on a Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Happy to be back in the chair this week, and I'm always happy to have not only Josh Kincaid alongside our friend from Washington State and the talking hedge out there, but also two other friends. This is like the Friends of Jimmy Hour, FOJ, if you will. Tim Egan from New Hampshire, Maggie Kinsella from Coyote Cannabis are also joining us here for this special edition of Green Rush Live. So gentlemen and lady, oh wait, I'm not supposed to say lady anymore. I read this whole article about that. It's Maggie. That's your name. We don't have to go into the old woman, lady, girl, whatever. It's just Maggie. Hi.
People.
Hi. Although I won't be offended if you want to refer to me as that. That's
Well, I appreciate that. And Lord knows I get ripped all the time. As long as people laugh at me, I could care less. This is actually a very serious time. Well, first of all, we have a breaking news story, if you will, because it was just, I believe, yesterday in New Hampshire that Tim Egan's hard work paid off and the New Hampshire House of Representatives voted for adult use legalization. Tim, congratulations, first of all, on that. I know how hard you worked for that. And not only did the House pass it, but it was like by a 70% margin. Am I right?
So, Jimmy, thank you for that. You know, it is a Good Friday because yesterday, after about 6 months of work, and we still have time to go, House Bill 639, which is the legalization regulation of cannabis in the state of New Hampshire, passed with a 71% majority, which is more than the 66 we need for veto proof. There, I'm letting my governor, Chris Sununu, know. 272 to 109. That was a bill that started in the Commerce Committee, passed out of Commerce Committee with about 65% approval rating. And then it goes to Ways and Means in New Hampshire. To help your viewers understand, any bill that is based on the economic impact of an industry, it goes to that committee first. So since cannabis is a retail business, it went to Commerce Committee. Then it has to go to the House and get voted on. Then it has to go to a fiscal committee, either Finance or Ways and Means. This one went to Ways and Means because it's revenue coming into the state, not just revenue going out. So we were very excited that we actually have accomplished the Senate part. Now, People are going to say, Tim, New Hampshire, the House has passed cannabis laws before, but never have they passed with more than a 71% or 70% majority, a veto-proof majority. So that's really important. And what that is really important is to tell our Senate that this has the equal amount of percentage of approval rating as the public does, right? 75% from the last UNH Survey Center poll of people that approve adult recreational cannabis in the state of New Hampshire. So now our legislators are saying what the people want, and hopefully senators are going to say, what's my job here? To do the will of the people. So that's where we're at as of 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And so we'll be on to the Senate Judiciary Committee because we're making laws. It's legalization of a formerly decriminalized cannabis leaf. So that's what will happen next in the Senate in probably about 2 weeks. You'll be the first one to know, Jimmy Young, and as well your pro cannabis media viewers.
Well, we've been following this whole thing for a few years, actually, Tim. I mean, at one point you were a representative of the town that you live in, and then, of course, redistricting happened and you got bumped, but you still obviously earned a lot of respect to be part of this cannabis committee that the New Hampshire state has put together. So you were out of sight. Maybe you didn't have a seat anymore, but they certainly didn't want to let you go, right?
Well, yeah, I was very excited when the folks I had worked with at New Hampshire Can, the trade association, asked me to become the chair and build out their advisory board, because all of us here are cannabis supporters. What we needed to do was draw in the folks who said, I don't enjoy cannabis, but I don't have a problem with it. People like that are IT people, construction folks, insurance, debt collateral financing businesses, all the people that actually help an industry grow. So that's how you get legislators to understand the economic impact. Don't just talk about, okay, live for your die, I want to enjoy my cannabis, or the ACLU, the Marijuana Policy Project, saying we shouldn't be sending people to jail for something that, one state over, people are making millions of dollars. But we needed to talk about the economic impact and the social impact, especially in a rural state like New Hampshire, where our number 2 industry is tourism. If you got ski mountains and hiking trails and you're not offering cannabis there, people are going to Maine and Vermont and Massachusetts. It's going to affect us economically. So I was excited to sort of take on that role, build that advisory committee. We're at about 12 members from all walks of life, from HVAC to growers to bankers. So that's, I think, how we sort of reset the table. And yeah, 4 years, I was a member of the House Legislature. Here's the last part I'll talk about. What frustrated me to not give this up, even though I got redistricted out and didn't get reelected. In the 4 years I was in the New Hampshire House, Massachusetts created a $4 billion industry. And I was like, okay, I'm not just going to sit here and watch this go away. I'm going to take all the hard-earned political capital, the political connections, the business connections that I earned, and I'm going to try and push this through. And we built a bipartisan coalition. You tell me where the ACLU and Americans for Prosperity ever meet. They're actually sitting at the table as part of our coalition. So, you get folks like that together. You get folks from both sides of the aisle. This bill, House Bill 639, was filed by the Republican majority leader and the Democratic minority leader. And they championed that. And actually, probably the big news that got overshadowed our cannabis bill is actually the bipartisan budget that those two hammered out yesterday. So I got two great people at the top of the food chain in their respective parties in the House working to see this through. That's how you get stuff done, right? We build a consensus. So my consensus says I should shut up now and let my other guests, your other guests.
That's right. Let's see if as New Hampshire goes, so goes the nation. Lord knows, because bipartisan has been a difficult challenge in Washington, D.C. Maggie Kinsella had a past, if you will, a past life, if you will, working with MassCan, now with Coyote Cannabis. And Josh, you've been in the finance world and the business world for a number of years. What is it about cannabis that it does seem to be a plant that can bring both sides of the aisle together with the goal of sharing some of the green? Is that actually, can that actually happen? Josh, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Maggie. Go ahead.
Definitely. I always found it interesting. I didn't start using cannabis until I was almost graduating high school. I had a shoulder injury, whatever. And so I realized like in college, it brought a whole bunch of people together that would normally like not be in the same room. And that's no different than the Hill. So DC's, it's bringing people together, and it's not for any other reason other than money. But that greed couldn't be allowed if it weren't for the fact that people just don't care. There's no pushback anymore. And I think that's the takeaway. That's the advantage. That's the good part, is that people realize now, whether it was my generation that lived through the fact that there's Senate hearings for tobacco causing cancer, and you would be a conspiracy theorist nut job if you thought that it was addictive, when the attorney generals, or not attorneys, the surgeon generals, one after another, decade after decade, said it's not addictive, it doesn't cause cancer. So we've kind of lived through this, and we're like, okay, well, there's a lot of worse things out there. Like cannabis is safer than tobacco, safer than alcohol. It's my niece and nephews don't partake in cannabis, but they definitely don't drink either. So long story short, people realize cannabis is safer than a lot of things, and it brings money, and there's no pushback. So of course it's going to grow.
There you go. Maggie, how do you've been someone who's been outside looking in and also inside looking out of the developments in Massachusetts. There's still plenty of issues, and Chris Ferrone wrote a very interesting piece today about the 5 things Massachusetts cannabis industry stakeholders are saying in private. Since we're not in private, I'm not asking you to say anything like that. That being said, how much further does Massachusetts have to mature to really get the respect of the nation? Because, there was a lot of excitement in the beginning. Now there's finger pointing and bullying going on in this state. Where are we now as far as the state of the industry in Massachusetts?
Well, we're in a circus. No.
Send in the clowns, then. Send in the clowns. All right.
I feel like we've really gotten away, just as a whole, looking at the regulatory framework at the state level and all of the things that interfere with that operation at the federal level. And for me, that tells me that the federal government has way too much control over what states do. Personally, and maybe I am silly for believing this, but I believe the federal government is just like a bystander who should regulate any interstate commerce errors or disagreements. Otherwise, they should have absolutely zero say in what states do at that level within the state. And I think some of that is the issue when we talk about things that are happening at the state level. I think a lot of it too is the dishonesty in the way in which we passed the bill, which was to regulate cannabis like alcohol. And anyone who's seen even an inkling of this process could tell you that we're regulating it more like plutonium than alcohol. So, and then just like the hubris of hypocrisy that everyone is looking at, but it feels like nothing is moving away from it, which is the federal government, back to the federal government, that they have cannabis still in Schedule 1, right, while simultaneously holding a patent on the medical application, which contradicts cannabis being in that schedule in the first place. So I think there's a lot of dishonesty, a lot of hypocrisy, and, really just starting there and taking ownership over where we really have not fulfilled what we said we were going to fulfill. And so, I could pick apart all of the things that I disagree with from the implementation at the CCC level, especially the original CCC members who, no judgment to them. They did the best they could, but also I think that they were able to kind of devoid themselves of certain responsibilities, even though they're supposed to be responsible for the industry. So we're seeing a lot of a failure to implement regulations in the way that they're written. I've personally seen, for example, suitability review. I have a friend, Leah Daniels, you know her. She years ago when she was applying, they put her under a suitability review, and she was like, I don't qualify for this. And I looked at it and I was like, no, you don't qualify for this. Like, why are they not following the regulatory framework that has been put in front of them? And she ended up protesting and changing the whole game around, the way that they were looking at economic empowerment applicants and social equity applicants. And I know for a fact that suitability review is still an issue with getting people jobs in the industry. So that's probably, one of the many gripes that I have with our regulatory framework, what we have to fix, like where we're at, how we need to mature. Like, there's a lot, but I think that if everyone works in their lane and communicates with each other in their lane, that we could make a lot of progress. I think there's too many people who want to be first, which I think is an interesting, and I'll go back to the saying, the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese.
Ooh.
So sometimes I don't think being first means that you're going to be the most successful. And so I think maybe changing our mindset in the way in which we approach getting into the space and being in it for longevity versus, just trying to, because I know it's like the green rush and everyone really wanted to make it. And we watched how much money came in. I was in early on in the industry and I saw how much money came in, and I saw also the years of stress that piled up in a short period of time. So I don't know what winning looks like to some people, but I wouldn't count that as winning if you've, aged yourself through the roof trying to make all of that money. So, I could go on forever.
Yeah, and you will. You've got
I
the rest of the show.
will step back and just,
But Tim was nodding in agreement most of the time
Well,
that you were talking. Go ahead.
Well, because she says something really key, which is about being first. While I'm frustrated that New Hampshire has taken so long, one of the things that we've been able to do is two things. Initially in the bill, we wanted to build an advisory board to be able to tap into the best practices, learn what happened in Washington, in Colorado, and Massachusetts, California, and take those. And as we build out some type of cannabis control board, take those best practices. So maybe we are benefiting by not being first. Frustratingly, the Commerce Committee said, if you want this, it's going to have to undergo oversight by the Liquor Commission, because they already have the enforcement, they already have the implementation to do testing. If we create, in creating labs, they already do regulation. So we had to sort of acquiesce there, but we'll get another bite at the apple when we go to the Senate. And we think that's one of the things that the Senate might want, is to be able to bring in best practices so that when we execute it, not only from the business side, but from the social issue side, and be able to make sure that we're having, appropriate packaging, appropriate labeling, all the things that other states have been dinged for, like the state of Vermont. They have the most difficult advertising laws in the country. How do you expect someone to open a business? Then you can't advertise that what you're selling. You can only say, I'm open 9 to 5. What are you selling? I can't tell you. How much do you have? What's the price? I can't tell you. So if we can learn from those. So I think she's right on target of sometimes first isn't always best, because, it's like my rule of thumb. My dad used to tell me, never buy the first model of a car. Wait for everybody to figure out. And then the next year they figured out all the bugs.
Right.
So
Well,
I'm nodding in agreement there. So
and we do have a member of one of the first states that went adult use and legalized it or decriminalized it in Washington State. And Josh, you guys are still learning. Am I right? You still can't get it right, even though you were first one in, right?
Yeah, 10 years into it, so you can't grow. You can't have a home grow. It's a felony, actually. They created a felony law, if you believe that, in a regulated marketplace. They created new draconian felonies to say specifically, you can't maintain or occupy a cannabis lounge, nor can you grow from home, both felonies. So that's pretty ridiculous. You need an MMJ card if you want to grow from home. There is no lounge. And we're still running around like chickens with our head cut off. Hopefully you guys are going to learn from that Petri dish experiment that we're doing with stupid stuff, wasting people's times, Because, just like Maggie said, if you're first, you're dealing with all the regulatory nightmares where everyone was like, hey, let's just get this bill passed and then we'll change it. Fast forward a decade, nothing's changed. But what we have to deal with is a regulatory agency who was forced to deal with cannabis who didn't want to. That should be a big takeaway from people, is that when you have a liquor board that has to be a liquor and cannabis board, they don't want to deal with it. Then all of a sudden you have bias, you have individuals who don't want to do it, you have rogue agents who shut down regions because the wine industry is friends with them. Just look at Red Mountain, great terroir over there. Actually, 18 businesses just got shut down in Washington as of last night. Breaking news, hearing it here first. 18 people in central Washington are going to lose their license over some ridiculous stuff that's happening over there with pesticides, and the regulators coming in, and it's leaching into the soil from outside industries. Meanwhile, you have cows everywhere. They don't care about what the smell is. They care about cannabis. It's the NIMBYs, not my backyard. So it's all of this stuff that you have to deal with from a regulatory environment that you're not used to, you don't expect, you don't anticipate, and it will destroy your business if you weren't insane enough to put up with it. With the, you can't have bright colors, or you can't have stupid shapes because it's attractive to children. Like, if I could just run my business and advertise like a normal person and put my name on the side of a bus or whatever, this is a legal product. Why are we trying to do business with our hands tied behind our back? The regulation isn't helping us. It's hindering us. This whole state in Washington, I'm based in Seattle. I'm in the heart of it. And the product is terrible as a direct result of the massive taxes and regulatory burdens placed on these people trying to grow cannabis. They're not even growers. Let's be real. They're just faking it, trying to scale. They're doing an okay job, charging like $200 an ounce, like Supernova, that hits like hay, tastes like ash, and pretending to be, a top shelf brand. These people need to go away. And when they do, and when they fail, I'm not going to be there to say, I told you so, but I will eat my popcorn and watch it burn, because it doesn't deserve to be here in the first place.
Wow. I don't even, I'm speechless, Josh, actually, which is such a rarity.
That's
for me.
impossible.
Can I ask a question of everyone? I'm going to go right around the room here and ask real quick. Are we seeing the effort of learning about the product, the history, the science at our elected officials levels? In other words, I love to point the finger and say to elected officials, well, did you do any research on it? Did you actually Google it? Did you actually look anything up? Well, that would take time. Exactly. Take the time. I'm not sure they are. Tim, in New Hampshire, how hard do you have to educate those on the other side that are still prohibitionists?
Yeah, and I was a cannabis enjoyer. I got involved in it from the sustainability side. Then I joined the legislature for 4 years. And, now I'm on the other side in the industry, and I'm seeing that there has never been a consistent educational mechanism. And shameless plug, Jimmy knows it's coming. I'm part of Vermont State University. We actually have a campus in Castleton where we're actually teaching cannabis studies. And I've been telling the faculty there and my department chair, our number one clients shouldn't be business leaders like my fellow guests here. It should be legislators, because they know nothing about the impact of the plant, the medicinal quality of the plant, and the science of the plant, which leads to all the commerce. So I would agree 100% that our legislatures, and they should be wiser. As a legislator, I was always my mantra of like, oh, the bill's going to come to me. I better know what it is, so I know I feel like I voted well on behalf of my constituents.
Right.
A lot of them it is, oh, I don't like cannabis, so I'm going to vote no. Oh, cannabis is okay, I'm going to vote yes. That's not helpful.
No. Maggie, in Massachusetts, and I know you have better insight on this than I do because you were around it longer, as far as being an advocate and working on actually getting the law passed. Are we still educating our legislators, or does Massachusetts, is it an exception that our legislature actually has done research, is looking at it as a medicinal product that can spur the economy?
I'm going to be honest. I stepped away from the legislative game when I, stepped away from MassCan back in 2020, but I would hope that people who participate in educational coalitions were doing the work that the orgs that do that and getting it done. I know Elevate Northeast is constantly doing educational events. BCW had done some educational stuff. I do see commissioners attend some of these events and some of these lectures. Commissioner Camargo, I believe, was at NECAN. So I think there is an effort by regulators. I don't think I've actually seen any legislators at any of the events specifically, but I would give the commissioners a shout out that I have seen them at these events, and I do see them engaging a little bit more.
And Josh, 10 years. You're still fighting the same fight you fought 10 years ago, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot though, if you're paying attention. I don't think most people are though. It's surprising to me, having done a podcast for 5 years on the Talking Hedge, and all the guests that you come on, it seems like they're coming out of the woodworks having not paid attention. There's all this data, like literal like reports and real life experiences, and they're not bringing anybody on their board or even looking at the old reports or old experiences. 10 years is a million, man. I look as old as you, Jimmy, and I'm only 45. So the cannabis industry definitely ages you a lot in this industry. I will point out the people that aren't paying attention are the Tilrays of the world, with Brendan Kennedy, who was running it, saying we're a CPG company, a consumer product good company. We don't need cannabis. And like, look at them. They're the zombies holding each other up with Hexo and all those other companies. But the folks who are paying attention, like out of Florida, there's Fluent. The CEO of Fluent has a company in Oregon. He knows all about what's happening over there with their 3,500 licenses running amok, doing their thing. And Flora Growth out of Florida too also has, a different perspective from CBD to producer processors on the West Coast, and having international perspectives. So some of them will live and thrive and the majority of them won't. But that's not a bad thing, because I think a lot of these people who deserve a platform will have one eventually, as soon as these other people get out of the way. So a lot of these MSOs are creating this infrastructure and platforms. And when MedMen dissolves and all these other, clowns dissolve, it'll provide a platform for the true connoisseur growers from the legacy market to finally give them a platform to give us product worth consuming.
Yeah. Hey, Tim Egan, look into your crystal ball. Is New Hampshire Senate going to approve this? Is Chris Sununu going to sign it?
Can I comment on one thing, Josh?
Of course you can. I've lost control.
No, we're just trying to give you dynamic discussion.
That's all right. Go ahead. Just keep
in
going.
Between guests. No, he was right. The idea that, I think one of the things again, looking at the best practices, Vermont and the craft cannabis approach. Maine, there's a little bit of a craft cannabis approach. The big MSOs are going to ruin this industry. The small market person, the craft beer style approach to this is really what I think is rooted in smart economic development, because it's local, small business development because it's regional and personal, and it can actually add to agritourism, right? I can't go to a big grow facility and go for a tour, but if I'm going to, Josh's little farm and he's got a great craft product, I can go tour the farm, see how it's made, sit down at the company store, get some product, enjoy it. That's where I think the business is going. So I wanted to commend him that
it is
right.
Tim, it is going that direction, but it's not there yet. And those businesses don't really exist yet. There isn't a facility I want to go to and smoke. I just did a cup here in Washington, 155 different cultivars, and only 3 were decent. And I wouldn't go back and buy any of them. So I don't think the narrative that MSOs are going to destroy the market, I don't think that's accurate. I think it's being destroyed from the market from inside, because the majority of license holders are trash. They don't know what they're doing. They came from construction, no offense. They came from other places, no offense. You don't know what you're doing, and you are destroying the market. It's not the MSOs. I think the MSOs are doing a better service by spending all of this money, wasting all this investor money to provide a resource and platform for the connoisseurs, while currently the existing license holders are the ones destroying the market.
That's interesting. Hey, so Tim, 15 seconds.
Crystal ball.
Yes, no, maybe, definitely.
I'll bet you a product of your choice on my behalf that I can't get this past the Senate. I actually had a conversation with our majority and minority leader this morning, asking me to handicap. There's only 24 members of the Senate. We need, one is on sick leave, so that means there's only 23. It means I need 12 to pass it. 16 gives me a veto-proof majority. I think I have 15 or 16. So I would need a veto-proof majority, because whether the governor vetoes it or not, the threat of a veto-proof majority to a guy who's making, wind chimes of running for president, he probably doesn't want to be, overridden by his own House and Senate. I mentioned before, 70% in the House, 66% is all you need, 2/3 majority in either body. 16 gives me 2/3, 15, 16 gives me 2/3 in the Senate. I don't think a governor, he can do what Phil Scott did in Vermont. He didn't vote yes for it. He didn't vote no for it. He didn't sign it or veto it. He stuck it in the drawer for 5 days. It automatically turns into law.
Yeah.
That's what I think is going to happen here in New Hampshire. And if I'm wrong, I'll be buying you pre-rolls for a month.
Oh boy. Well, you know what? We'll talk about that anyway. Hey, Tim Egan, thank you so much for joining us on short notice. As usual, you bring a great insight to what goes on with real world, real state politics. And I know our man, Dr. Levy Malone here from Vermont, loved all the shout outs to the Vermont farmers out there, because we know as goes New Hampshire, so does the nation. As goes the growing of Vermont, so does the growing in New England. That's the way I look at it. Don't go anywhere, anybody. We're a little late. Yeah, it's Cannabis Standard Time here on a Friday afternoon at Pro Cannabis Media. We're going to come back. We've got a bunch of other guests coming in. Maggie Kinsella, I'm going to give you credit for this. You're really the producer of today's show. You booked all these guests, and no pressure on you, okay? Because, we have our regulars. We're going to get our viewers. No worries about that. But I just hope the people who do tune in do get something out of it. So, Tim Egan, as always, thank you so much. We'll have more of Green Rush Live after this. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 1900. I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
All right, welcome back to Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled, really live Business of Cannabis talk show on a Friday afternoon here on Pro Cannabis Media. I am Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Very proud to be in the chair this week. And I also want to do a shout out to Doug Miller and Josh Kincaid, who filled in admirably last week. And I do appreciate that. And there'll be more and more new hosts coming into this program on Friday afternoons now, just because I think the more voices we hear, the better. And and a lot of people, I get it. Sometimes I talk too much. I understand. It's okay. I can take that. I'm very self-aware. I really am, I swear. Okay, let's bring in a couple of new guests on the show here this half hour. We're going to welcome in Jose Lorenzo and Ryan Dominguez. Jose is the Justice for Housing. That's what it's going to say. And Ryan Dominguez is the executive director of Mass Cultiv Ed. Did I say it right? Or Cultivate Ed.
Yes, exactly.
I knew there was an ed for education on the end of that.
There is an ed for education in there.
All right. And Maggie, why? Here's the question for Maggie. Why did you pick these two guys to join us? Go ahead.
Oh, well, actually, I met Ryan at an event at Black Market Nubian Square, and I had his business card, and then I lost it. And then we were connected through, I can't remember if I reached out to you or if Kara introduced, no, I think I may have reached out. It was Kara. So, because I'm organizing an event with Coyote Cannabis called Breaking the Cycle, Navigating Prison Reform, Reentry, and Reducing Recidivism. And both of these gentlemen have experience in various forms within the system. And I want the event itself to be about highlighting individuals who work within, this area and their expertise and what they're doing and what they're working on, if they need help with anything, if they're looking to connect with anyone, and just really get into what's happening. And so Ryan introduced me to Jose because he's gone through the Map Cultivated program. So yeah, that's kind of the story.
That's so Ryan said she's kind of pointed to you that you introduced her to Jose.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing with your organization now.
Yes. Well, thank you, Maggie, and thank you, Jimmy, for allowing us to, use this platform to talk about our organization. We are an organization that is based out in Massachusetts, where we focus on social equity for the cannabis industry. And the way that we accomplish that are through three main components. We focus on expungement work and trying to clear the records and really change the legacies of individuals who, come to any of our expungement clinics, take part in our program. I think it's our number one focus is really trying to remove any kind of stigma from somebody's criminal record and to be able to allow them to get into the cannabis industry or really any industry for that matter. And then we also do some education work. And Jose here is actually one of the most recent graduates of our program. And we partner with local community colleges, including Roxbury Community College in Boston, Holyoke Community College, and Northern Essex Community College, where we do a cannabis kind of foundation course. We teach people about the science behind cannabis, the terpenes and how it affects the body. But we also get into a lot about the laws and regulations here in Massachusetts, maybe how the war on drugs has affected, individuals and communities. And then we have some really great partners in the cannabis industry who come in and talk about what it's like to work at a dispensary, what it's like to work at a cultivation facility, so that individuals can then, have a little bit of a snapshot of what it would be like to start a career in cannabis. And then once they complete that certificate course, we actually place them into paid internships or direct employment opportunities with our number of different cannabis companies, ranging from the large, big multi-state operators all the way down to some social equity and economic empowerment businesses all across the state of Massachusetts. And that has been really fruitful because of the fact that some people have gotten in and, done really great working as a bud tender, and based on their background have now got moved up to working in like a corporate social responsibility team or becoming a brand ambassador. So we use it as a kind of stepping stone for people to get into the industry and kind of learn about what it's like to work there, and then the possibilities after that are really endless for folks. So that's what we're working on. We usually have a cohort that starts in the spring and one that starts in the fall. So just to do a quick little shameless plug, if anybody's interested, they can check us out on our website at masscultivated.com or any of our social media pages at masscultivated.
Ryan, this isn't your first interview. You did that. You did very well with that question. You got the plug in too, which was subtle. Jose, tell us a little about Justice for Housing. Go ahead.
So let me first start by saying that I'm basically hands on hands with both. I'm here representing Mass Cultivated, but Justice for Housing is also what I do as well. And so real briefly, Justice for Housing helps with housing for formerly incarcerated individuals only, the formerly incarcerated population. We advocate for individuals, we overturn evictions, things of that nature, everything centered around housing and what other services there are. And so at the same time, this is how I find myself partnered up with Mass Cultivated. I did the program. I then finished it. Like he said, I was placed into a internship with a company like Ascend Wellness, where I was doing corporate social responsibility work. And just being involved, it creates kind of like a trickle effect of opportunities. Once I got in there, I met other individuals and they started working on with a business plan for myself, because you get a responsible vendor certification with the program. And so there's so many alternative routes that I didn't even know of had it not been for the program that was available to me with the Corey and all. So it was a beautiful opportunity to get involved in something and not only just do it, but I specifically wanted the business aspect of it. I didn't want to work in retail. I didn't want to work the front lines. I didn't want to just be stuck growing. I wanted to know the business side of it. And Mass Cultivated gave me that opportunity through that internship. And it all works hand in hand. So bringing it back to Justice for Housing, you know, as community-based organizations and nonprofits, I am a formerly incarcerated individual myself. I served a 9-year prison sentence, And so I'm very geared towards aiding those in my situation with a fresh start. And so, you know, here we are working on the housing aspect. Some of our constituents need jobs. Sometimes they don't want just your regular, they want to seek for opportunities with growth. And as we know, this is a growing industry. So, and it can't be one that's very biased either, because most of it was made off of, initially the beginning of it is the war on drugs. And so a lot of the people involved were once hurt by this industry before it was an industry. And so everything goes hand in hand. We all work with each other. We refer individuals there, they refer individuals to us. We help them house. We just housed a client that was a part of the fellowship through Mass Cultivated, and Justice for Housing came in and make sure that this person received their voucher. And so it's all synergy. It's all synergy, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah. Josh, I'm sure I don't want to ignore you. I'm going to let you jump in here and ask a question or bring up something about, the prison system in the U.S. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm just not. I don't believe that punishment works. Rehab, education, experiential works better. Now, that's my opinion. Josh, where are you on that?
That's not what I was gonna say, but if you want my opinion, it's a publicly traded prison system, Jimmy. It's there's at least three companies that I know of that are publicly traded, and they have guarantees of 100% filled. Beds filled or not, they're gonna pay out. So these individuals that were incarcerated like Jose, they're stock, they're shares to the publicly traded prison system. It's modern slavery. We saw that when people weren't allowed to get out of California prisons because they were being utilized in the fires. When your labor is being forced upon you instead of your freedom, there's nothing else you can call that other than slavery, Jimmy. But what I was going to ask is about overdoses, because you hear a lot about like worst case scenarios. People are eating these edibles, and if it's somebody's first time, it could be like their worst nightmare ever. And so when I was looking at writing a bill to overturn a felony in Washington for maintaining and operating a lounge or cafe, I came across a lot of different bills. There's like 12 different states that are doing this. California had one in particular about overdoses, and I found that interesting. Is that something that you guys are having to focus on, is edible consumption? And what type of education are you guys doing around quote unquote overdoses?
I think that for us specifically, we're really focused on folks that are formerly incarcerated. So trying to, educate them about what they can use and what they can't use based on if they're still on probation or like they're coming out of the criminal justice system. It's really a lot of those types of things. But like Jose said, like we work with a lot of community-based organizations, and that's really how we were able to create the different services that we do have. So we are called upon by different community organizations to try to come in and provide some community education to folks about that. And I think, one of the main components of that community education that we do is focused around safe uses, but then also letting them know about the regulated cannabis industry and the reason why it's safe to go shop at a, dispensary as opposed to maybe trying to get it from the legacy market, specifically because of the fact that it is regulated, it is being tested. But even with that said, I don't want to, I guess, section off the legacy market, because I think they are really kind of our future within this business, like Jose talked about with him having business operations. So I think there's just a fine line that I guess we have to try to navigate with, being safe and making sure that, the products that are out there, people won't overdose on and that kind of thing, but also trying to invite people from the legacy market to come in and use their expertise in a kind of legal and business type of way.
We saw that the NBA is going to no longer drug test. Are prisons going to continue to drug test for cannabis specifically? I'm curious about that, because otherwise you have to just basically get them on CBD or some other non-psychoactive cannabinoid. So do they still like drug test for cannabis specifically while they're on parole?
Jose, you might have better insight into this one.
Yeah, so right now they can't unless you have a drug conviction, any type of conviction geared around any type of crimes when it comes to any kind of honestly, you could be caught, let's say, selling another drug that has nothing to do with cannabis, nothing at all. But because you have these drug related offenses, they put you on these tracks. And so they believe they need to monitor you based off of your criminal history. If you're an individual who, for instance, you claim that you committed your crime while under an influence. It doesn't matter if it's alcohol, it doesn't matter if it's cannabis, it doesn't matter if it's opioids. The point is, you have a substance problem, and that's when they monitor you because it's not specifically catered towards the cannabis that they're monitoring for. They want the excuse to be able to know what you have in your system in general. So you could have had cannabis as your initial drug of choice or substance of choice, and then you picked up something new along the way inside the prison system, which happens very often, believe it or not. And so what they want to know is, okay, we know you've had problems with substance abuse before. You may have stopped cannabis today, but now you picked up opioids, and we just need to monitor to make sure that you're not committing crimes off of influence. Once again, that's only if you're an individual that has a history of violent crimes and you're released, the likelihood they honestly they cannot run a drug test on you because you have no history of this. So they can't just impose because with those drug testing they have fees, they have scheduled days. These take times out of people's day, and you have to sacrifice those days. And so if you have no correlation with any type of substance abuse, they don't really have the right to impose that on you. They have to have some type of reason. Of course, a lot of individuals don't know that, but these are things that comes with the education.
Yeah, and yet a white collar crime like money laundering, wire fraud, money is a substance, and that it produces this same kind of endomorphin high, that same kind of brain addiction that causes you to want to have that greed or whatever the outcome that's giving you the reward receptors. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
Absolutely.
But it does make sense to try and help those individuals when they are out. So what you mentioned terpenes, I think that's phenomenal to kind of try and talk about what the effects are rather than just THC percentages. Are there other like minor cannabinoids that are helping out with PTSD? I'm assuming I don't know what people are experiencing out of prison. I can only assume it's PTSD, anxiety, depression. I lived in Japan, and when I came back, I had reverse culture shock. So I can't even imagine being in prison for 9 years and coming out and being like, whoa, there's grass or whatever. So are you finding like other minor cannabinoids to be helpful? CBG for inflammation, CBN to help sleep. What are you guys educating on, and are you getting any feedback on what's working?
Yeah, and I will just say, like, I think that every person that goes through our fellowship has like different, maybe preferences about the way that they interact with cannabis. I think that also, I think later on you'll have F8 Foundation on this show as well, and they work specifically with people who are trying to overcome like, drug addictions during the opioid crisis, and we have some of the referrals from them as well. So I think it really is more about teaching them about, not actually needing specifically to use cannabis to get into this industry. And I think that's just a way for us to change legacies by them learning a new skill, like learning how to, be a bud tender or cultivation facility. And I think that when we have fellows that do use cannabis, a lot of that learning about what are the different, products or, things that they can use to maybe deal with their PTSD is learned on the job. And I think a lot of those are during the internships while they're working as bud tenders and talking with the patients themselves or talking with some of their, colleagues about like what they would recommend to a patient that's dealing with XYZ. So I think that for the most part, we're just teaching them the skills to be able to work into the industry and not necessarily what they're going to be able to use themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, hopefully you guys are teaching them a little bit about how to be aware of frauds out there. There's a lot of people taking advantage of social equity applicants. It's already happened on the West Coast. So they need to be aware of that. They need, yeah, there needs to be a lot of education and awareness and support and mentorships and all of that stuff for people to reach out, not for if it happens, but when.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's a big thing too. I can't even count how many of these kind of investors have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I like what your program does. Can we use some of your fellows to fill out this application to be like a social equity person?" And then when you read into the fine print, like it really puts people into a disadvantage, just because of the fact that maybe they don't have that, funding, that investment to, have a real equity stake. So really, it's helping some of these other, kind of predatory investors, like you said, get into an equity kind of license. And whenever we have those, we try to sound the alarm and like let people know like this is not like how our industry should be going. But also out of the people who are graduating, even though we are focused on workforce development, there are people like Jose who are really interested in entrepreneurship and want to, maybe use the state of Massachusetts social equity program or economic empowerment program to be able to, take that next step. So really us as an organization, we try to go above and beyond some of the scope of our core programs and, give them some of that additional training, set them up with a network of professionals that are in the legal space, the accounting space, the lobbying space. And we do have these kind of business workshops. We're actually going to have one kind of concurrently with the event that we're doing with Maggie that day. And I think that's just really a way for us to create this infrastructure kind of folks that are mentoring some of our graduates. And maybe one day we'll see, a little bit down the line, some of our own fellows kind of open up their businesses. So, kind of starts here and it has to start somewhere, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love the enthusiasm and the smile. You're proud of it and you should be.
Yeah.
Maggie, when is your event? I don't know if we've really talked about that. Can we talk a little bit about your event? We got a few minutes here.
Yeah, so the event is Wednesday, April 19th. The doors will open at 4:30 p.m. and the event will end at 7:30 p.m. It's at the Do It Center in Roxbury. It is free to register, but registration is required. So we have on coyotecannabisco.com, there's a Breaking the Cycle page and all the information is there. So you can just use that event registration code. And it's really, we have mass cultivated. So we've got Ryan and Jose, who are actually going to be on a panel with Cynthia and Todd from F8 Foundation. They're on next. And we also have Artie Finn from APDS and Andy Klein from Advocates for Human Potential. And they work with currently incarcerated individuals, making sure that they have access to education and healthcare, and being treated fairly. And then just formerly incarcerated individuals, like Jose and Kyle Moon and Todd, who's gonna be on next, talk about their actual lived experience, what they went through, what the rules are, and then like if those rules are even realistic. Can you follow them? Who are they following their own rules? I find oftentimes that they're not following their own rules, and I think we need to talk about it. And I think people need to share what's actually happening. And that hopefully we can really build a network of people that are performing these actions and changing the way that we look at incarceration, changing the way we look at behavior and which behavior needs to be addressed one way, whether it's a separation from society in a capacity that helps them become rehabilitated and not just locks them in a cage and doesn't, treat them like a person anymore. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but this event is really just about highlighting individuals and organizations that have gone through these systems and processes and know what's happening and know what needs to be done. So
I'm amazed. I still pinch myself that I'm sitting here on a talk show talking about cannabis after all these years, right? I am, and there's so many elements to it that are positive, that have educational components to it, because the opportunity now is open, and well, we all know the stigma's still there, but it's softened a little bit. Can we say that? At least it's softened, and people say, well, it is legal. Well, yeah. How about we learn about it? How about we accept it? Getting to normalization is my new mantra. It isn't about legalization. It's about acceptance of the plant in our world, and those that have it and need it the most should have access to it and should be able to grow it themselves. So Jose and Ryan, you guys were great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not going to commit to the 19th just because I can't commit to what I'm doing tomorrow, and I just hope I get up tomorrow. Okay. That being said, I want to thank you guys for coming in, and hopefully you'll follow, like, and share all the Pro Cannabis Media content, including our We Talk News show, which, by the way, does follow this live show at 6 p.m. So Ryan and Jose, thank you again. We're going to come back with a couple of more of Maggie's friends in just a minute. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, what?
You what would you give me to jump in that pool behind us? Would you give me Friday off?
I would give
you
you
Friday off.
I'll give you
Friday off,
and I'll give you $5 on top of it.
$5 and Friday off if I jump in the pool?
You got to strip down to your skivvies. Jump in the pool.
I'm not going to strip down to my skivvies, but I will jump in the pool.
All right, let's see. Let's see if he's got the guts to do this. Let's see. You know, he doesn't know this, but he's really an idiot.
Oh!
He really is.
Time to use the
And then the hairpiece floated to the top.
It's a holiday and that's better than
He
ever.
swims like my dad.
Wow, I can't believe that was 30 years ago for NECN. That's right, New England Cable News. Mike Adams and I were the original sports guys there, and we're getting back together again on Wednesday night, April 12th at the Summit Lounge in Worcester, Massachusetts for a live In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and Mike Adams, the legendary Planet Mikey. You got to come down to the Summit Lounge and join us. 7 p.m. live to 9 p.m. will be the live show. We'll have contests and prizes and some giveaways. What does this have to do with cannabis, you ask? You'll have to come down to the Summit Lounge to check it out, or tune in on the Pro Cannabis Media social media network Wednesday night, April 12th, 7 to 9 p.m. Join us, won't you?
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it could make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weejits filtration system. What? The Weejits.com, Weejits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weejits filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weejits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I. And welcome back to a Good Friday, really live edition of Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, sometime host of Green Rush Live. Josh Kincaid from Washington State and the Talking Hedge is with us, as is Maggie Kinsella from Coyote Cannabis, who's running an event on April 19th that we can certainly talk more about. But right now, we want to introduce our guest for this half hour is Cynthia. And is it Cussy Goldberg? It's not Cussy.
Yes, it is.
It's Cussy Goldberg. It makes sense.
You pronounced it correctly.
What's going on? I'm sorry. It took me a minute to get
Todd, we can hear you.
Look at that. We hear and see Todd. This is
You
big.
did great. You
What's
did
going
great.
on?
All
It's
right.
It took me a minute. You know what I mean? My
You
ignorance
got
to
it.
this technology.
Yeah, no, and Todd, you have a built-in excuse, okay?
You
Because
should. You're good.
technology still screws me up, and I
Oh,
didn't
man,
spend time
unbelievable.
where you spend time for 35 years, okay? So, hey, you know, it is what it is. I want to, Cynthia, I want to get back to you in a second about the F8 Foundation.
Sure.
But I'm going to read the bio for Todd Fournier now that he's online with us, and he's a formerly incarcerated man serving a second-degree life term in society. I love that explanation. Over 25 years in prison, additional time as a technical parole violation, which landed me back in prison. That would be, these are Todd's words, not mine. For many years, he was released a few years ago, dedicated his life to recovery, God, second chances, and showing people can change. He knows how to help formerly incarcerated and those that suffer from addiction. And yes, we all can change. And he's employed full-time consulting for the F8 Foundation. Hey, I actually know about the F8 Foundation because we got Cynthia Cussy Goldberg with us. This is unbelievable. You guys are like in a whole family. Anyway, Todd, I appreciate you so much for coming on with us. And also, anybody who's had to deal with technology under deadline or pressure like that knows, you know, thank goodness it's good to see you. That's all I could say. Good to
Likewise.
see you. Good to hear you.
I'm
All right,
honored to
now,
be here.
hey, Cynthia, tell us about the F8 Foundation, and then we'll get into Todd. Go ahead.
Okay, the F8 Foundation is a kind of an out-of-box approach for those formerly incarcerated and those that suffer from substance use disorder. We predominantly specialize in the male population, although I do work with female, that have had long-term incarceration and those people that are also exonerated. So, it's a reentry program. And when I say reentry, I'd like everyone to think of it this way. Think of a spaceship in outer space. They use the word reentry when that spaceship is coming back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's what it feels like when you are incarcerated. You are in a world of your own. You're in out of space. Nothing is like anybody knows in society. So when you re-enter, you have absolutely no idea how to start your life over again. You have no ID. You don't know how to take public transportation. You don't know how to grocery shop. You don't know how to do a grocery list. And you think that's simple. And then pro-social activities, because I'm telling you, you come out with a sheen, and I know firsthand that you don't feel the same as everybody else in society. You come out with a blemish, you feel less than, and they don't make it easy for you not to feel less than while you're incarcerated. So that's what we do. We have a program, and it's based on each individual. Everyone gets a separate template from us, and we gear our treatment plans for specifically the needs of those formerly incarcerated.
You know, I'm in the last half hour, and Josh jumped right on board with me on this one. I'm not a big fan of the private prison system in the United States. I think that I'm not big even on punishment. I think you have to have consequences, but certainly rehabbing and learning from those is far better, a far better approach. But I mean, you know, who am I but the loudmouth guy from Massachusetts? Todd, how has your life? How has it improved after your work now with the F8 Foundation? How's that?
My whole world has just changed completely around. I had to work on my thought process because I realized that my thinking wasn't pro-social. That I had that convict mentality from being in jail all them years, and I come out here the first time, and I thought I had it all together, that I knew it all, that I don't need any help, and lo and behold, I fell, and going back a second time, I had to take a serious look at myself and get involved with people and really get involved with programs and get honest with myself and come to the realization that I am an addict and I need to get the help and I need to do the things that they say I need to do to stay clean and sober. And I took it upon myself to do all those things. And I've reached out to Cynthia, and she's helped me. And I go through changes still to this day. You know, but the beautiful thing about it, I have a real solid support system that I utilize every single day, because there's so much out here that I don't know, and I talk to people. I don't make decisions on my own. I talk to many people about what's going on in my life and get the feedback from them, and it's been very successful and helpful for me.
That's fantastic. That is a testimonial that must make you feel pretty good, Cynthia.
Absolutely.
Right?
Todd is a wonderful man.
But you have a lot of Todd. You have a lot of examples like Todd, I'm guessing, with your foundation too.
I do.
Josh, I know you're aching to get in here and ask some questions. I know that about you. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm curious about like okay, so we're talking about cannabis, I guess, with the cannabis culture and this podcast specifically. So I'm wondering what that culture looks like behind bars, and not the contraband, but the culture. Do people talk about cannabis medicinally? Is it for recreation? Do they talk about it at all? Is there opportunities to farm with hemp or cannabis that you know of? Is that changing? Can you talk to us a little bit about what cannabis is like behind bars, if you had that experience at all?
Yeah,
I haven't, to be honest with you. I've been nothing but clean and sober through my whole return this time, and I kind of realized that for me, that's just the gate to open up for other things in my life to experiment with. and I leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can respond to that if you would. So, since I work in really the insidious world of addiction, asking the DOC to have a program like that, it's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, it's not. Would it be nice? Oh, we have beautiful farming and we keep everyone calm, and and even though the canteen, we're all hungry and it's not good, it's not going to work out. But I will tell you that I have promoted many of my clients. I have to think of it this way. We have clients who have substance use disorder and mental health, and that's coexisting disorders. Do I want to see, and I'm not a doctor, so it's up to the doctor, to decide. But if I have a client that's, using heroin, but they need something, they're using heroin. Why? Because they have anxiety, but they could smoke a joint instead, or not get on benzos. Again, I'm not a doctor, so it's up to their therapist or doctor, and that helps them live a good life. I am for it. I've advocated for clients who were on parole and probation to get medical medicinal, marijuana cards. Yeah. And absolutely, it's worked for them. They're working, they're productive, they're not on an addictive substance anymore. So I for some, and like Todd said, for some that's just not the place to go with them. But for many, yes, I have many clients now who, have a card, will go to the dispensary, and they're compliant with everything, doing well, happy. So, as far as behind the DOC walls, I mean, I have to side with Todd there. I didn't do anything. Does it go on in the DOC? Of course. Pick up the newspaper. Not only that, and then some. I mean, why do you think that the mail is copied so that nothing can be laced? Albeit K2 they call it, or whether it's marijuana or any other drug, which I have no control over. But that's why the mail system is copied now in the DOC, because drugs were coming in. So, but as far as my clients and using it correctly and it helping them, yes, they do. They do.
Cynthia, you work in the addiction community, and I'm pretty sure I'm sure you know who Dr. Peter Grinspoon is.
Yes.
Because I asked him this very question that I'm about to ask you. Okay. Mm-hmm. How can you tell the difference between a physical addiction and a dependency on a product that actually has health benefits?
Well, that's, if you have a product like marijuana that has health benefits, you're not going to go out and rob a store or rob an ATM because you're so physically and psychologically addicted that it changes your inability to be a brother, a sister, a mother, a father. You're not going to steal a car. You don't have it. I think you don't have it. Does it help you? It does. But it's like parents will say to me, well, is it like when my son's on heroin? Isn't it just like cigarettes? And I said, well, if you don't have a cigarette, you might be a little cranky. But you might not commit a huge crime because it doesn't take over your body. It doesn't have, it's a painful, from what I understand, addiction like heroin. Such a painful that you can't control it. You can't think of anything but doing that. And I don't feel that cannabis has that hold on you. Not
and
one
yet,
bit.
Here we are, still
there we are,
struggling with getting this plant off the Controlled Substances Schedule 1, which aligned with heroin. I mean, it's right there in the laws of our country right now. Right. And I just, well, I do get it, because I think money gets involved with everything, every decision in Washington, D.C., and it is an acceptance of what we have to deal with, I think, more than anything, because we're not gonna be able to change anything now. I can tell you that. Maggie, I think, did you have something? I thought you were about to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I am curious about because substance abuse has been tied to incarceration, specifically cannabis prohibition, which is why I think that this area has taken the lead on things like reentry and looking at incarceration as a whole. And is it an appropriate form of consequence, to your point, Jimmy, that we take individuals with substance abuse problems and even put them into prison to begin with?
Right.
And how many of those substance abuse problems start in prison or get worse in prison? And then does that actually help for when they get out and then are feeling depressed and are looking for something to escape that feeling from, and what that looks like for just kind of what all of that really looks like, and what you think we should be doing instead of incarceration for things like substance abuse.
Well, I can answer that. So we have, in addition to the F8, I'm president of criminal justice. So we advocate with prison legal services. We advocate. In fact, I have a speaking engagement to get rid of joint venture, how to, all these different things. So we advocated. We had recently, when somebody has a strong substance use disorder and they won't stop, you can Section 35 them. And that's committing them to, and often they send them to jail. So here you are, which is listed as substance use disorder as a disease. And you're very sick and you're put into jail and you're put into not a hospital-like setting where you would get treatment. You're thrown in a jail cell.
Right.
Maybe they give you some comfort meds. When I say comfort meds, Benadryl to calm you down. I mean, some of the jails have some programs now, but to put somebody where you have keys and officers that are yelling at you and not in a hospital-like setting to treat your disease. So you're criminalizing a disease. We have made a little progress. We now have, like, Recovery Centers of America will have a unit for people, but there's not enough places. So they still get sent to jail when you have a disease. I understand, if somebody commits a heinous crime on this, they have no choice to be sent to jail. But many of the people that I work with, they are just very, very sick individuals, and they need a hospital-like setting, not kicked and told to be stand for count or, march for chow, or thrown up against the wall and patted down and put in shackles and put in handcuffs. So that's what society does to people with substance use, which is a disease.
Wow.
Can I give my feedback? I'm just sitting back, taking all this in, right? And these are my thoughts and my feelings towards what we're talking about, right? Number one, right? I think marijuana alters your thought process. It changes your thinking. I'm not for marijuana. I could get a card if I wanted to, but I'm in recovery. And if I was to go get a card, me smoking grass, it takes me out of my recovery. I don't consider myself to be in recovery. Recovery to me is when you don't take any drugs at all. You don't need drugs to function in the real world. And I think our society today it's all about giving someone something to get through the day. And it's sad. You know what I mean? And in prison, to answer your question, I've known a lot of guys that come into prison that weren't addicts, and when they leave, they're addicts. So it's a serious, serious problem in a penitentiary right now, because I've never seen anything like that when I came back and did all them years for my technical violation. And for me, it's almost like they're creating addicts in prison and sending them out in the street.
Is that to deal with the boredom or the stress, or what is your take on that, Todd? Why are people becoming addicts in prison?
Yeah, because because this is a trend I see in society that for me, I went in prison at 18 years old and dealt with the worst of worst environments. I never ever got on medication to deal with my surroundings and to deal with my environment. I always claimed the people, positive people, and done positive things and utilized my time in a positive way. And in today's society in prison, they don't have a lot of these role models and programs in prison to help people if they wanted to get the help.
Mm-hmm. Todd, what's the takeaway for your success? Because people are using cannabis to get off of heroin. They call it Cali sober for California. And that's obviously not something that you're supportive of. And you just went cold turkey, which is very, very challenging and difficult thing to do. And yet you've done it. How, do you have advice, or can you tell the audience and people who might be going through something similar how you were able to do it and what your secret is?
What I have done is I've took us. Let me say this: I've read a lot of books on addiction because for me, I couldn't understand this little thing in my brain having control over me. So I wanted to understand it, and I read many, many, many books on substance abuse and how it affects the brain, and how it, when you put a substance in your brain, it triggers all these chemicals go off in the brain, and it changes your thought process and all that. But I took the time to understand what addiction it was about in my life, and I've been involved with a lot of programs, and I've done a lot of soul searching. I've dealt with a lot of issues that brought me into prison. I'm all about helping people, and even in prison, I was always a big advocate on helping other people. That there's another way of doing things, not negative but positive. And me coming out this time, I did things differently than I did the first time. This time here, which I did, was ask for help. Before I couldn't do that because I had this jailhouse mentality. Now I'm strong, man. Men don't ask for help. But you know what I realized? That it takes a strong guy to ask for help. And I can be vulnerable today, and it's all right to be vulnerable. And I'm living life out here because you know why? I have a big support system. I'm utilizing the support system. I've taken it upon myself to reach out and get involved with programs that help me transition out here. That I met some really good people on my adventure coming out here. And I'm going to tell you something. Every day is getting better and better. And just look at me right now, having a meeting with you guys.
Well, easy there. Okay. First of all, I ask for help all the time. All right. Just for the record. Okay. I admit I am a challenge to be around. I understand I'm very aware of what my challenges are. Everybody who knows me knows that as well.
I applaud you.
Well, I appreciate that. And you know what they say though, Todd, you'll love this. We're supposed to learn from our mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
Then I should be a freaking PhD. Okay. Because I've made so many mistakes.
All right. Join the crowd.
Yeah, Ralph, that's right. There you go. No, I'm human. I bleed red. Okay.
I respect that too.
Yeah.
Right.
Because see, you can be genuine.
Well, I appreciate that because that's a very important thing for me as a talk show host and someone who created this media network for the voices of the industry and to tell the stories. And, I didn't know going into it 3-4 years ago when I started with one little podcast that we build this little network that we're live on every social media platform. I really had no idea until I met Maggie. No, actually, the first day I met Maggie was the first day I did my podcast. So she knows how far I've come in 5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything about the advocacy movement. I voted for it. I didn't know anything about the prison system. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Perfectly honest. And I got to tell you, now that I know, I get really pissed off about it now too.
Right. Josh, you asked a question why people do drugs or what they do in there, right? Well, I can give you a little example. So you have many people that suffer from mental illness in prison. And you have to figure they have a couple therapists for 1,000 people. And the procedure is, it's not like you can just pick up your phone and say, I need an appointment and I need meds. You put a sick slip in. You might have to wait a month.
A month?
A month. Yeah. And then you have DOC proved medication. So, maybe a Cymbalta or a Prozac works okay, but the DOC Mass Health doesn't pay for that. So they give you something else. And you got to remember, you're in a cage. All you are is in your head. We call it the horse stall pace. I can always tell when someone's been in segregation by the pacing that they do. I'm like, oh boy, that's just the size of the cell. And then if you really, you flip out, Todd, remember, what do? They cuff you up and they throw you in a turtle suit. They strip your clothes and they throw you in. And the only way I can describe it is like a zip up oven mitt, right, Todd? zip up padded and toss you in. And there you lay, and they check on you with a flashlight. But you also got to remember, talking about mental health, that they're in there with a flashlight every minute, shining, 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 right? And so if people have an opportunity for drugs to escape all that pain they're going through, they're going to take it. They're going to take it, right? I mean, Todd, you did it like I did it. I didn't do anything, but not everybody. You have a lot of really sad, broken people that need help. And then they release them to society, broken and in need of help. And then they wonder why recidivism is the way it is, right?
And for me, I want to be a strong advocate on the guys that are coming behind me and to let them know that there is help out here and to educate people.
What about on the flip side, you guys? What about trying to change this system rather than trying to rebuild the human being after being demolished through the lack of rehabilitation? It's not rehabilitating, it's debilitating.
Right.
So,
you know what it is?
No.
It's not even about corrections anymore. It's all about, it's a big business today. It's all about money. There you, and that's it right there. It ain't even about correction. It's all about money.
It is. But what we're trying to do is actually, some of the institutions that I work with, that I see my clients via Zoom, because they let me start a treatment plan before they're leaving now. They didn't used to do that. It was like they taught, there you go, the gate opens. Have a nice day. Here's a reentry plan from 1970 with spilled coffee on it. Good luck. All the places are closed. I have no place to go. I mean, it's true. You know, I'm being kind of facetious, but Todd knows
absolutely
it's true. So now we're advocating to get, you know, like we get to go in the prisons. PLS goes in, a bunch of us coalitions get to go in and start to work with the gentleman. We're getting recovery coaches in there. It's a tough system, and it's slow, and it's such baby steps, but there's a little progress being made. I have to say that. Like I get to work with gentlemen, what we call the ATU unit now. That's the awaiting trial unit. So that I can prepare them, like for when they're released, instead of, oh, okay, the judge just kept them loose, now they have nowhere to go. At least I have a safety net or contingency plan. Not all the prisons are doing that, but you know, they're trying to do what they say they are. I don't know, Todd. What do you think? Do you think there's any progress?
It's gone. From my experience coming back this time, I was just totally blown away on how backwards it's gone. Because when I came into prison, there was a lot of programs available. The whole system was so different than it is now. And they when people get visits, they discourage the visits from coming in. They used to have a lot of participation from outsiders, volunteers coming into the programs. They stopped that because they were getting educated on what was really going on in the prison system, and they don't want that because it's a big smokescreen with them.
Well, Todd Fournier and I got to tell you, Cynthia Goldberg, this has really been enlightening for me, and I welcome you here anytime. There's actually somebody that's coming on next on the program who posted something in the chat room, and I don't think Richie's going to mind me saying it. It's Richie Guerra, and he says recovery is different for different people, right?
That's
recovery.
Right.
You got to. It depends on what you're recovering from. Right.
Touche. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, and since I have to actually excuse myself from my own program here because I have an obligation that I found out about 3:30 this afternoon that I have to drive 45 minutes to get to.
Okay.
So I do want to give one more plug for we're doing a live show from the Summit Lounge this coming Wednesday, April 12th. 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you can't be at the Summit Lounge at 116 Water Street in Worcester, yes, you could tune in to procannabismedia.com on our homepage, our Roku channel, our Apple channel. And yes, we'll be carrying that whole show, that whole talk show. And I'm bringing out of the bullpen, as they say, my old comrade from NECN, Mike Adams. He will also share his stories about the use of cannabis, because Mike was one of those people that actually got busted in the 90s when he was a full-time sports guy on NECN and never was suspended. Never was suspended. And I want people to understand that it is a different world for white people and black people when it comes to this plant. Okay.
Yeah.
And another example, we'll be talking about that on Wednesday. So Josh and Maggie, congratulations. You guys get to bring us home. And Cynthia and Todd, I really enjoyed talking with you. We're going to continue with Green Rush Live after this, but I won't be here. Have a good weekend.
You too, Dan. Thank you for letting me come on.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, what?
You what would you give me to jump in that pool behind us? Would you give me
I would
Friday
give
off?
you. I would give
you
you
me Friday off.
I'll give you
Friday off,
and I'll give you $5 on top of it.
$5 and Friday off if I jump in the pool.
You got to strip down to your skivvies. Jump in the pool.
I'm not going to strip down to my skivvies, but I will jump in the pool.
All right, let's see. Let's see if he's got the guts to do this. Let's see. You know, he doesn't know this, but he's really an idiot.
Oh!
He really is.
Time to use the
And then the hairpiece floated to the top.
It's a holiday and that's better than
He
ever.
swims like my dad.
Wow, I can't believe that was 30 years ago for NECN. That's right, New England Cable News. Mike Adams and I were the original sports guys there, and we're getting back together again on Wednesday night, April 12th at the Summit Lounge in Worcester, Massachusetts for a live In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and Mike Adams, the legendary Planet Mikey. You got to come down to the Summit Lounge and join us 7 p.m. live to 9 p.m. will be the live show. We'll have contests and prizes and some giveaways. What does this have to do with cannabis, you ask? You'll have to come down to the Summit Lounge to check it out, or tune in on the Pro Cannabis Media social media network Wednesday night, April 12th, 7 to 9 p.m. Join us, won't you?
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Welcome back to the Green Rush. We are live every Friday from 4 to 6 Eastern, talking about everything that is the business of cannabis. Today, we've got Maggie with us. She's the director of operations at Coyote Cannabis, to bring on a guest with Sensi Media Group. He is Richard William Guerra. Richard, thanks for being with us.
Hey, Josh and Maggie. Happy
Yeah, we were
Friday.
funny. We were just talking about on the last segment with Jimmy, who had to bounce, but he had mentioned something about trying to normalize cannabis. And I remember being in Cincy's office in 2015 in Colorado when they were just kind of getting started. There was maybe a couple of guys in there with Cultivated Synergy, this co-working space, and on the wall was normalizing cannabis. And I had to take a photo of it, and I was like, "That's it." It's not about, it's like professionalizing cannabis, normalizing cannabis. Just that's why I go to the gym every day and just throw it in people's faces. I don't have, that's my own advocacy, just kind of getting it out there. So
great logo.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I started with Sensi in Denver, and I moved there in 2015. I think I met them 2016, and it was Cultivated Synergy. I worked at a coffee shop down the street. At the time, I had felony charges and was only able to really get jobs at coffee shops and restaurants and places that would kind of just get me in there quick without a background check. And then I found out about Cultivated Synergy, which was a block away, was meeting a bunch of cannabis industry peeps at the coffee shop, and went to a Sensi party full of brands and, the community. And that kind of really got me excited. And then Sensi actually hired me again without any sort of a background check or anything. And I've worked there ever since. So it was kind of interesting you mentioned that in terms of my
story. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So was it kind of so Cultivated Synergy is a cannabis co-working space. They had an event center, like right in the art district, the Rhino district of Denver, and provided for some good opportunities in networking. Did you find that was kind of helpful for your reentry into society, to be able to participate and see what things were going on and to relearn, reeducate, and find new people? Or like, tell me a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. I guess maybe some other questions I'm happy to answer about my past and background in terms of incarceration and the criminal justice system. But, to answer your question there, I got off probation at some point, probably about 5 years after my original arrest in the state of Massachusetts, and went back home to Texas, where I, grew up. I ended up in Massachusetts for college, and that's around the time I had, or how I ended up, in that kind of a sitch with getting arrested. But so I went back to Texas, and I just was in a bad way there. I couldn't get healthcare. It was like I couldn't get free healthcare there. It was like paid, and it wasn't easy to get access to a therapist or anything like that. And I couldn't. There was obviously not cannabis and CBD and psilocybin, things like that were not around. So I ended up just kind of taking a leap and getting helped into moving into Colorado, and originally got set up with the free healthcare there, was able to do EMDR therapy with the counselor, find some cannabis and CBD and psilocybin microdosing, like different ways to kind of help me deal with my anxiety and PTSD that I had developed around having felonies, but also being in jail. And so, Colorado itself for me at that point, pre-legalization of cannabis in Massachusetts, and or at least, opening up of the market, was just amazing for, I suppose, reentry, or just generally healing from that lasting, trauma and anxiety that I was feeling. And so, for me, I loved cannabis growing up in high school and college. It was a big deal. And, I had my own, kind of misuse and ignorance around ecstasy and cocaine and, psychedelics and other things that I was doing in college, and ultimately was officially incarcerated for psilocybin and cocaine and not cannabis. But cannabis was included, and that was a big part of what I was, distributing and selling as a college student. So for me to be in a legal market where, products and businesses and everybody's making a living, and I was at this point where I was hoping to make a way for myself to make a living as well, outside of just the hospitality environment. So super inspiring, very, it really was kind of the spark, and then from there, all kinds of things happened to help me break down that weighted kind of all those weights that were on me about what I had gone through. Just the system.
Interesting. So you were in college or college years, and you were selling the same drugs that all the rest of us in college were taking, and yet you got busted for it. and did some time, took you away from your ability to, not only vote, but to learn in your youth and get that internship or whatever and climb the corporate ladder and all those things that they tell you you're supposed to do.
Right.
In hindsight, are you grateful you didn't go that route?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I feel incredibly blessed in so many ways. To have gone through that experience personally. It was very difficult, and it still lingers, physically. Even sometimes I can feel it. It wasn't fun. It didn't feel great. It definitely was very difficult for my friends and family as well. Had a big impact, as it does, on the people around you. But I, unlike so many, and this is kind of my message and what I want to kind of just be able to support and get behind, and getting involved in Maggie's event, and just generally going forward in my life. Most individuals that are arrested or that go to jail or that are get through that system and end up with felonies, and it's not, they just didn't have oftentimes they don't have the support that I had. I had a big system of friends that were in the live music scene. Prior to being arrested, I was a live music journalist and event producer. So I had this like DJs and bands and musicians and friends that were really there for me, as well as the college, the university I went to was actually really cool about it. They were writing back to me and supporting me, and I just had a kind of a tight knit family back in Texas that was willing to spend a lot of money to be on the phone with me every day and send me commissary and generally send me books and letters. And that I had just constant flow of communication while incarcerated, and I didn't want for anything in terms of commissary or phones or visits, and it was really a stark contrast to most of the people that I was locked up with, and the people that I saw in the prison system, many of which were in that cycle of recidivism where it's not like you got everybody in your life banding behind you. Oftentimes those individuals incarcerated don't have a whole lot of a system or people that have their back, I suppose. So, for me, I feel very blessed to had that, because I was able to really see through this lens. I was also studying journalism in college, was just about to finish before I went to jail. And so it was like, for me, I had this. Another thing I want to add is that I also got arrested and got bailed out the day of. My family and my friends were all pulled the money together. Bail was high, but it wasn't outrageous. And I actually had a whole 12 months of being free after my arrest to prepare to be taking a plea deal and then going to jail. And that also is not normal. And if only every person arrested had that opportunity to have a full 12 months to really prepare mentally and physically. And for me, it shook me straight to get arrested. I was still drinking like a young idiot and was consuming certain things, but my drugs of choice, pills, cocaine, like the things that had really gotten me in that position, I had an ability to really quit. And so I was able to pick up meditation and study martial arts and just generally build that support. And then so as soon as I entered jail, I was pretty ready, which I think is rare. So I wish that was the kind of thing that the individuals that commit crimes that are gonna need to deal with incarceration that I had, was that ability to prepare in some ways. And I also wish that there was more of a communication from the outside allowed and given to those incarcerated as well, because man, does that make a massive difference too. So I'm not sure if did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I actually want to know more about what would make a bigger difference, not only on the rehabilitation side on the exit, but like we mentioned in the last segment, what can help improve. So not imagine yourself not just the warden, but like, I don't know, the president or whoever makes decisions on jails. How do you improve the system to make it actually rehabilitation? Do you have any suggestions or advice or any input?
Yeah. I actually just watched this amazing episode of John Oliver. It just came out this week, I think, about segregation units specifically. And then there's an issue or an episode of the Jon Stewart show, which is on Apple Plus, that came out a couple weeks ago, and that's also about the incarceration epidemic and the situation. So definitely encourage people to go find those. But in watching that the last few weeks, I've had some stuff come up, and and it's reminding me of what I witnessed. And yeah, I mean, honestly, like for instance, with the segregation idea and that unit and that idea of solitary confinement, it's become this thing. I mean, it's probably always been that way, but it definitely still is, where the enforcement, the like law inside these places, the COs and stuff like that, they're in their defense to some degree. I mean, there is definitely the ability for gang violence or some sort of violence between inmates, and just and also just inmates that are just so cooped up and so sick of it, which who isn't, that they want to act up and and cause trouble. And it can be hard if you're already in jail. Like, I get it, it's hard for them to understand how to treat somebody who crosses those lines in there, because it seems like their number one reason or way to do it is just throw them in solitary confinement for the smallest thing all the way up to the biggest thing, and to keep them in there for long times if they really want to mess around with them. And it becomes this like, fuck with me and we'll fuck back with you kind of thing. And so ideally it would not be like that. There would be like some sort of real safeguards towards guards and those that are policing these units, to really not be able to kind of push back with this like aggression towards inmates that are doing wrong, I guess. So I saw in that episode that I watched, I think it was South or North Dakota has gotten rid of segregation, and then they've created like an innovative unit where if you want to go across the line and get yourself in altercations and issues like that, well, now you're not going to be in the general pop, you'll be in this other unit that's not segregation, but you're kind of going to be forced into a lot of counseling, a lot of conversations to discuss your issues and to discuss why are you in this place. And so I think that would be huge to have, not just for those who are doing wrong, but even just generally anybody in jail, to be able to have more consistent opportunities for them to communicate and talk with somebody about what got them in there, what are they dealing with, what are they going to do when they come out. Because they've like the South Bay Correctional in Boston that I was locked up in, I mean, they've got a little counselor that you can go see for 30 minutes every so often and talk, but it's not consistent, and it's not something that I think really is effective either. So that would be a good start, as if there was more and it's like, you think about it, it's like, I'm sure their reason in these places is that there's not the money, but it's like, we know there's the money, like our money goes into these places as taxpayers. Plus, like, we know that they're making tons of profits. So it's kind of like, it's indicative of our larger macro issues. It's like, we know there's money, we know who's got it, and you need to take some of it and put it into building these programs up for a reason. It's not so we can benefit inmates, which I think we should do because they're humans and we need to treat them as such. But it's more like, what are we locking someone up for? What are we expecting from that experience as a society? Like, we want people to come back, integrate, be safe again. Like, we don't want people to come back, integrate, be more unwell or more unsafe, and decide to do even worse things, because unfortunately that's the kind of environment that it generally fosters, is like a bigger sickness and like a more of an aggression and anger towards the world. And that's just the jail itself. I think what was really difficult for me, even more so to some degree, was now I'm back in jail or out of jail, and I have to go to probation and parole in two different parts of the city and pay them both money, and I don't even know how to get a job. And I could list 100 reasons and ways that incarceration and post-incarceration are harder for so many people in our society than it was for me. Like, what was easiest, the best part about me, my incarceration and post-incarceration, is I was just a foreign guy from Texas that went to college. All my friends were in college, and other than that, nobody knew me. In jail, outside of the jail, it's a different animal if like you are from the city that, or the place that you get arrested in, you go to jail in, and now you're in jail and you're from a place, or you're out of jail and you're from a place. Like, unfortunately, there tends to be a lot of obligation, depending on what neighborhood you're from or what town you're from, as to who you're gonna join up with in jail. And I was able to kind of just not have to be that way. And it was a very, unique and fortunate situation. I never went to segregation, or and was able to. I really just avoided going to the hole like the plague, because in my mind that just meant I could get out, and more. It would take longer for me to get out. My objective was, how do I get to my parole and get paroled immediately and get out of here fast. And so it felt like getting in any sort of trouble was never going to work out in my benefit.
There seems to be a lot of synergy between corporate America, the educational system, and prisons. Whereas, me growing up in the 80s, middle management got decimated, and now there's no support, no mentorship. And now you have either cheeks and seats employees, you have high turnover, you have, people who just aren't happy with what they're doing. And then you look at what else is happening out there with teachers, and they don't care anymore because the students aren't really being pushed by the parents. And so the teacher's motivation is really, really dropping. You mentioned corrections officers, they don't really do much. And, I noticed that when people treat dogs bad, like, you would never go to a pound and adopt a pit bull and put it in a purse and then walk around with it. You would have to treat that pit bull and rehabilitate it. And I don't think a lot of people, when they buy animals, understand how to treat that dog. And I don't think parole officers know how to treat humans. I don't think teachers have really learned how to treat and interact with children. I think we've sort of lost this way of management over the last few decades at every single level, all the way down. And when people, don't walk their dogs anymore, and they're wondering why they're digging holes or acting out, it's because you have to treat and train that dog. And when corrections officers don't know how to treat individuals, and they just throw them in isolation, that's not how you treat a human being. That's how you treat a dog. So we need to re-educate these corrections officers on how, and maybe we need shorter terms. If they get burnt out so quick, shorter terms, get them out of there. I don't know what the solution is.
I mean, it's kind of like, it's not a fun job. I mean, it's like similar to being a police officer, or like, or working at the night shift at a checker,
or a referee at a little kids game. It's a thankless job.
There's just all these like positions that are supposed to be filled, and you'd believe would be someone would show up to work with the intention of like putting a lot of energy and like intention into their job, but then you see what they're getting paid, particularly, or the amount of hours, or just the gruelingness of the gig versus cost of living. And you'll find a lot of, I think that there's a bigger issue that at play that involves general cost of living versus wages being a huge issue across the board, but especially with these gigs. I mean, one would think they probably, corrections officers, and criminal justice folks, they probably get paid pretty well. Generally, they get, I'm sure they have benefits and all of that, but it's not a very glamorous gig. And if anything, a lot of the people I noticed that came in there, it seemed like they would have really loved to have been doing anything else. It's not like it's the calling for anybody. Nobody's like, oh man, I really look forward to go to jail to sit on a block with a bunch of miserable people with negative energy. Like, they're not like, nobody's like, oh man, let me go get that paper. I'm excited to get paid today. So there's just and that's the struggle, is it's like, but I suppose it's like, it is your job. This is how you're getting paid. Like, but it's like, I doubt they're all that afraid of losing their job because they're being mindless about it, or they're not being conscious about it. That's maybe what we should have more of it'd be better if these institutions were like, if you don't take these programs and learn how to treat inmates with respect, or deal with the most heinous moments the right way, and then we're going to find out and you're going to lose your job. But it definitely never felt like that. It kind of felt like, you know, they'd have to do something serious, like actually beat an inmate or cross a serious line criminally themselves. Otherwise they were going to keep coming back. They're just going to keep their jobs. It doesn't matter if they are taking,
and they're unionized too. So there's a union for them, but not for us. But Maggie, you had brought Richard on because you're going to have an event, right? Can you talk a little bit about that as we kind of wrap this show up, and why you invited Richard on for this event? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how Richard's going to be involved.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So Richard's going to be a speaker at 5:15 until 5:30. So he's going to start speaking at 5:15. He's going to share some of his story, read some poetry that he wrote. But I had mentioned this event on the Metro West networking group that Eric Robichaud does. And I believe, Richard, you had messaged me after and asked how you get involved. And I was like, well, actually, I have a speaking spot open, and I would love for you to share your background and your experience and just kind of shed some light on it. And so it ended up working out. But yeah, the event is April 19th. It's a Wednesday from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So we're going to have opening speaker at 5. So the doors open 4:30. 5 p.m. is our first speaker. 5:15, Richard will be speaking. And then we have 3 panels with 30-minute panels and then 15 minutes of discussion, so that the panelists can have an open Q&A session with the audience and really kind of engage with each other. And Richard's also going to introduce the panels in Classroom A. So yeah, I'm really excited to have him and for the event itself, and to just kind of shed some light on this topic that I don't think we give enough attention to or know enough about. And I think the more people that recognize that it's a business and we're not actually rehabilitating people in the right way, and that people deserve better, regardless of how they messed up. You know, if to Jimmy's point earlier, you know, you can make a mistake. We're humans, and we can mess up pretty bad. We can be very dangerous, you know, when we want to be. But I think that, you know, we have the capacity and the power. The real power that we have is an acknowledgement of those errors, an acknowledgement of the consequences, and figuring out how to move forward, and using those past errors to recognize when some of those patterns emerge in our life in the future. And in that moment, recognizing that pattern and recognizing that you have the power over your own behavior. You have power over how you react to things. And I think, you know, the more that we can talk about that, and we can treat people and help them recognize that power, that, you know, as a society, we could be better off. So, yeah.
It's a great place to leave. So I want to thank Maggie Kinsella, your Director of Operations, Coyote Cannabis, for being kind of the director, if you will. You've got a lot of great guests, as well as bringing Richard on. Richard, thank you for telling your story. Appreciate you both for being on today and telling us all about incarceration. Definitely learned a lot. Like Jimmy said, it was kind of enlightening and a little disturbing at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, my last message I'll say is, if you know, which I'm sure you do, someone personally firsthand that has been incarcerated or that's going through something similar, you know, try to make the effort to reach out and be a resource and be a friend and make sure they're good, you know, because they're definitely not necessarily good if that's what they're looking at, and if that's what they just got done doing, they're definitely not doing great. One way or the other, and even years later, it's still important to talk about for me. So don't forget them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm Josh Kincaid. I'm with the Talking Hedge. Come back next Friday for the Green Rush, the Cannabis Business Talk Show produced by Pro Cannabis Media, discussing new issues in the cannabis market each week, conducting a deep dive into topics of the industry. All good stuff. Come back next week, 4 to 6, every week live here and everywhere. So we'll see you then. Until then, you guys have a great weekend.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission shuts down an Oregon-owned dispensary chain and revokes all 3 of their state licenses. Plus, the NBA Players Association and the league have opened the door for promotion and investment in the cannabis industry while stopping any testing. Back in the Bay State, Little MJ's Market in Grafton is suing Jushi over bullying tactics with the local town council in Tingsboro. The Federal Sentencing Commission has urged leniency with nonviolent cannabis convictions, while Connecticut drops over 1,500 cases of cannabis possession. We Talk News with Elena Pinto is next.
So for years, we've been doing manufacturing, financial services, medical, and so forth on businesses that stand alone, from doctors' offices to day traders to even small banks. And so when cannabis came along, all of the tools, skills, and miscellaneous that we learned in there, we were able to apply it for them. And for us, it wasn't that big of a problem or a challenge. It worked great. And so they just needed a reporting feature in one software, and luckily that the software company came through for us, came it back, and now it's become the backbone for our offerings, and it's worked out incredibly well.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News for the week of April 7th. I'm Elena Pinto. Our lead story is one of the most visible developments toward acceptance and normalization of cannabis. The National Basketball Association and that league's Player Association have reached a tentative new collective bargaining agreement. In that agreement, it will eliminate all testing for cannabis and give opportunities for its players to promote, invest, and use cannabis. This deal still has to be approved by both sides, but both are excited about these changes to ensure labor peace in the NBA for the next 7 years, up to 2030. There are already, though, a number of NBA Hall of Famers who have lent their names to celebrity brands like Paul Pierce and Gary Payton. Chris Webber has started a capital fund, and Sean Kemp is an operator of a dispensary in Washington. Also, Carmelo Anthony has a brand available in California. Many of those players have been interviewed about the use and acceptance of weed on the Conversation with Dave Briggs on Pro Cannabis Media. Now we turn to the Bay State of Massachusetts, where there are no fewer than 3 items with national implications. It's been a busy few weeks for the Cannabis Control Commission, and here's our Massachusetts report with PCM founder Jimmy Young.
Suspensions, lawsuits, bullying. Are these signs that the cannabis industry in Massachusetts is maturing? I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and this is the Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. The Cannabis Control Commission of Massachusetts revoked the 3 licenses of the Elevate dispensary with a store in Athol and 2 provisional licenses in Williamstown and in Orange. Their owner, Sean Adediji, posted a vicious rant on Instagram that berated his employees and threatened their families. This was not the only time Elevate has had problems with the regulators. In fact, the CCC has a long list of violations that led up to this suspension. Now, he also owns dispensaries in Oregon, and his reputation there isn't great either. In fact, the GM and others in that Oregon operation all resigned after this latest verbal exchange with his workers in Massachusetts. Speaking of the Bay State, and that's what we do here on the Bay State Cannabis Report, it's lawsuit time. MJ's Market in Grafton is a small, locally owned dispensary in the middle of a quiet office industrial park on Centennial Drive in Grafton. Jushi is a giant, publicly traded multi-state operator worth millions who did over $284 million in revenue in 22, according to Yahoo Business. Now, MJ's wanted to open a dispensary across the divided highway in Tingsboro on Middlesex Road, right opposite Jushi. But the town council cited traffic concerns and other reasons that MJ's feels was fueled by Jushi, since they were not concerned when another licensee petitioned for a host agreement. This is another example of why many states ban out-of-state operators from entering legal states. And finally, Framingham-based MCR Labs is accusing the Cannabis Control Commission's investigators of harassment and intimidation during an unannounced inspection of their facility a few weeks ago. Earlier in March, Michael Kahn, the CEO of MCR Labs, accused the CCC for storming his facility and bullying his employees during their intimidating inspection. Well, that's the Bay State Cannabis Report for this week, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. I'm Jimmy Young reporting for Weed Talk News.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
Overseas in Europe, there is some movement in the German cannabis market. They were supposed to launch in the fall, but delays in European weed markets is no different than here in the States. Well, now the government is saying that that start will happen after the Easter holiday. And Lex Pelger has more in our European report.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creation with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Starting off in France, their medical cannabis experiment covering 3,000 patients is running into trouble because they're losing their main supply of CBD oil. Little Green Pharma produced 60% of their CBD oil supply, but now they're going to stop doing that, mostly because they were either selling it way under cost or giving it away for free. Opposition leaders charge that CBD shops are on every corner and somehow this experiment is running out of CBD oil. Are you trying to sabotage this medical cannabis experiment? In related news, authorities removed CBD products from the narcotics list and put them on the poisons list. This will reduce import costs and facilitate finding a new supply of CBD oil for the experiment. In Denmark, after 5 years of medical cannabis, there are now 4 pathways to acquiring medical cannabis products. 14% come through the country's medical cannabis pilot program. Mostly this is flower from Bedrocan and capsules from Aurora. And then 40% are magistral preparations, which is isolated THC and or CBD products made by pharmacists in the pharmacy. And then the rest is pharmaceutical preparations, primarily Sativex and Epidiolex. The pilot program has been dropping off in popularity due to 2 reasons. One is that they're slow to approve new products. Only 8 of the last 63 products have been approved. And it also reimburses much less. And in a country where healthcare is basically free, it is strange for the participants to be paying out of pocket for their medicine. And then 2 small updates from Spain and Switzerland. In Spain, the Medicines Agency is preparing a medical cannabis report to help slowly push that country towards medical cannabis, which is ironic considering it has the wide open cannabis social club scene in all of the EU. Then in Switzerland, as expected, after Basel's successful experiment last year selling cannabis out of pharmacies, Zurich got approval to do the same. So starting this August, participants in Zurich will be able to buy their medical cannabis from pharmacies. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations reporting for Weed Talk News.
When will the state of Florida get a legalization question on the ballot? Smart and Safe Florida is the group behind the effort, and TrueLeaf, one of the biggest MSOs in the industry and the #1 medical distributor and operator, has dropped $25 million on that effort. Right now, Smart and Safe Florida has collected 70% of the signatures necessary to get this legal adult use question on the ballot for 2024. And at the end of March, that group had collected 635,961 valid signatures, with 891,500 plus needed to get it on the 2024 ballot by the end of May. In New York, the state missed an equity plan deadline, and it looks like environmental reports and plans are going to be required for all farmers who are applying for licenses. Pam Schmiel has more from the Empire State.
I'm Pam Schmiel, host of the Mary Jane Society podcast with the New York City Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. For the second time, the New York Office of Cannabis Management has missed its deadline to produce a social equity plan. The plan is important because it's meant to guide the rollout of the state's adult use cannabis program. State Senator Jeremy Cooney says the agency must be accountable for its progress in launching the legal market in New York. These guidelines are not just suggestions, but statutory requirements set forth by the state legislature to ensure social and financial goals are met. And in other news, New York's Cannabis Control Board is requiring cultivation operators to provide an energy and environmental plan with their applications. They're asking cultivators to reduce environmental impacts like water usage, energy usage, and carbon emissions. Can cultivators bear the burden given all the other onerous taxes and regulations imposed on them? And finally, MJ Unpacked Trade Show is coming to New York City in a few weeks, where dispensary owners and brands will meet to do business. It will be a much different show compared to last year, now that dispensaries are starting to open throughout the state. That's this week's news that's this week's Cannabis Report. I'm Pam Schmiel from the Mary Jane Society podcast, reporting for Weed Talk News.
On the publicly traded cannabis stocks, iSpire is one of the first to go public this year, and it does look like it fell short of expectations. Our cannabis stock expert is Doug Miller, and he has more on the IPO.
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Finally, a new IPO. That's an initial public offering. iSpire, the e-cigarette and cannabis vape hardware company. Well, they began trading on 4/4, and they're under the ticker ISPR, but there are multiple red flags for this company. First, there's no shareholder power. Second, no manufacturing experience. And third, it's immediate dilution when you buy the shares. And they're being honest about all three of them. So they are saying this up front. Let's look at the stock chart. It's only been trading for 3 days. Today it closed at 708. It was up the first day, came down the second day, and it's down even more. So I'll be watching it, and I'll obviously update everybody on this stock because it's a new IPO in the cannabis industry. And that's this week's cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
The dispensary that was closed down in Massachusetts by the Cannabis Control Commission also has dispensaries in Oregon. And that's where we find Marianne Kersagi. She lives and works and reports there.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. So many things going on this week. The first story is that the second largest dispensary chain in Oregon has failed to pay taxes and vendors. The Willamette Week has uncovered an unprecedented amount of lawsuits, bully claims, and tax liens. All of these misdeeds were hidden under a facade of wealth and generosity, as the owners donated over $200,000 to local politicians and candidates. It's unclear why the OLCC hasn't taken license against their licensee. Another embattled Oregon company is Elevate, a dispensary located in Eugene. The owner also owns 2 dispensaries in Massachusetts. The owner has been arrested for threats and assaults against employees and posted a long, rambling threat on Instagram. The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission responded by revoking his licenses, stating that the acts posed an immediate or serious threat to public health, safety, or welfare. Again, it's unclear why the OLCC hasn't taken action against their licensee. Also, Groundworks, which is a large dispensary chain, has reportedly closed their manufacturing and kitchen facilities and is selling or shuttering. And finally, strict testing requirements are in effect for various mycotoxins and molds. On the surface, this seems like a good thing, but scientists say that the required levels of things like aspergillus are less than what is in the ambient air, so this will cause a number of crops to fail testing. There is a group working with the legislature and OHA to implement emergency changes. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
If you want to take advantage of the very vibrant cannabis job market, you might want to relocate to Missouri. Not only are they breaking sales records there, but they are also hiring. And Brandon Jones is driven by the pulse of that new market. And his Missouri Report is now sponsored by Baker Brands.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Bee Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News, sponsored by Baker Brands. Appreciate y'all. So yeah, I'm finally recovered from Oklahoma City and CannaCon, getting my voice back from Lucky Leaf. here first in Kansas City, and then the following weekend all the way down to Oklahoma City to go check out CannaCon. Both great events, both a little more centered on business to business. So it's quite a fun, experience meeting all the vendors, talking to all those guys, a lot of big names at all the places, a lot of fun people to interact with, just walking around, seeing lots of fun faces that you wouldn't imagine just walking through an event and just you're like, holy cow, that's somebody that works with Granddaddy Purp's actual strain, trying to get it, turned out by the FDA to actually show how it helps with sleep. So it was just quite an event. Now I'm back here in Kansas City getting ready for event season. As we all know, it's April, so 420 comes around and everybody has to throw an event prior, right after, and I'll call it 420 events. And then always there's one big, awesome 420 event, hopefully in your area. Here we've got two events. One I'm telling here on my hat is kind of, I would say, more based towards the culture. It's all the people that are going to be around. It's more of a consumption. Mendo Dope is going to be there. But a lot of the local home growers, don't take me wrong, there are going to be the dispensaries and the big boys there, but all the home growers are going to be able to come, be able to consume, be able to be there and just show off their products, share with each other, and just kind of, be part of a big community inside Kansas City. That's on the 15th and 16th. The Artisans of Dank and the Top Shelf crew are putting it on. So if you can go check out CannaFest in Kansas City, it's going to be awesome. And then the next event, like we talked about, hopefully you have a big one on 420 for everybody in your areas. Mine's put on by Smoky River Cannabis. Wiz Khalifa, Burner are going to be here. Mike Tyson, Ric Flair are going to be here in the audience. But that's going to be an unbelievable event where there's consumption lounges and spots that you can go. As long as you're 21, they're just going to check IDs and you're going to go in with a completely different area with stage, DJ, and then you can actually order cannabis products from the vendors there, and there'll be a delivery service, much like a lift lane, where you're just going to go after you make your order, show your ID to the delivery, and be able to purchase your cannabis right there at the site. They've got a cool little tool now that they can also add to the product if you don't want to bring your pipe and worry about it getting broken up at the event. They've got these fun little disposable pipes that are made of cardboard that you can actually fold into it, and they've got their fun little tag logo on them, and you can fold it out into a little bowl so you can throw it in the recycling bin when you're done. Don't worry about bringing your glass. Don't break it out at the concert or the event. But I can't believe April is here. Obviously, we got the draft at the end of the month too, so Kansas City is really getting ready to pop off this month. Got to rest up, try to get my voice back. So again, I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for We Talk News. Stay educated and medicated. Have a great week, guys.
Brandon Jones, Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries.
If you were wondering about the impact of the failure of Silicon Valley bank collapse, here's one factor. One of the most well-known payroll companies in the US is Paychex with an X. After May 1st, they will stop doing any business with the cannabis industry. About 300 businesses will be affected, and that includes direct deposit, taxpayer services, and other record keeping for employees. Another reason why federal banking reform needs to happen. It's been pretty quiet in the Keystone State lately, but now that state is getting closer to reimbursing medical patients for their medicine. Our Pennsylvania reporter is Claudia Post, and she has more on that story.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for We Talk News. This is a very interesting report in that the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court decided today that under the Commonwealth Medical Marijuana Act and the Pennsylvania Workers' Compensation Act, it is not a violation for an insurance company to reimburse a claimant's out-of-pocket costs to obtain medical marijuana. That's a big deal. This pertains to those persons who had been injured at work only. An insurance company or third-party administrator's failure to reimburse an injured worker for out-of-pocket expenses for legally obtained medical marijuana will be subject to penalties the amount of which will be decided by the workers' compensation judge. A growing number of states are learning from Pennsylvania, agreeing that health insurance programs should reimburse patients for their use of medical cannabis products, which is great news. As a part of his 2023-24 budget, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro has proposed taxing illegal adult use marijuana at a rate that is projected to bring in more than $188 million in revenue by the end of the decade. I personally think we're waiting too long, should do it now. Shapiro's budget proposes a 20% tax on the wholesale price of marijuana products sold through a regulated framework of productions and sales once legalized. The proposal includes estimates that assume adult use sales would begin in January 25, which is ridiculous, and bring in about $16 million in tax revenue that year. Okay, well, what happened to 2024? There's a new legislative session and new take on how recreational marijuana should be legalized in Pennsylvania. The new legislation will soon be introduced in the General Assembly, and that, they are saying, would be used through the state store system to sell weed. Now, I'd like to make mention of Pennsylvania and Iowa are the only two states in the union that have state store systems. And this, if they want to crater the adult use program, sell it through the state stores, they're going to lose their shirts. Officials say the program would prevent large corporations from gaining an unfair foothold in the industry or creating a monopoly. No, the monopoly is the state store, and ensure the estimated hundreds of millions in tax revenue is wisely used, which again, I doubt. There is bipartisan support for adult use in Pennsylvania. However, with some key differences that could spell success for weed at this time around. It's about time. This bill would also expunge all misdemeanor and low-level cannabis convictions and permit citizens to grow up to 6 plants for personal use. So that's a wrap from Pennsylvania, and I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. From We Talk News, have a fabulous week.
And finally, it looks like New Hampshire is ready to become the 22nd state to legalize adult use of cannabis. The New Hampshire House of Representatives passed an adult use law with bipartisan support by a vote of 272 to 109. House Bill 639 passed, and now it goes to the Senate, where it is also expected to pass. The big question now becomes, will Governor Chris Sununu sign it? In a recent poll, more than 70% of New Hampshire residents support legalization of cannabis use and sales for adults. So if New Hampshire does pass this bill, all 6 of the New England states will have legal adult use of cannabis markets. Another reason to be proud of this neck of the American woods. That's Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Elena Pinto reporting, and remember, it is a whole new world of weed out there, so use it responsibly. We'll see you next time.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weegits filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
As a broker, we have access to many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.